It wasn't snowing yet, but the wind sliced through my jacket as if December had a secret I hadn't learned. I had one hand on Sophie's shoulder, the other steadying the casserole dish I'd crafted from scratch the night before. Ethan trailed 2 steps behind, clutching the apple pie with both hands like it was a treasure. We pressed the doorbell. No answer came. After a minute, I slipped in through the side door, same as I had since I was tall enough to turn the knob. The kitchen carried the scent of rosemary roasted turkey and the maple glaze Dad always brushed on the ham. It should have felt like home, but no one glanced up. My mother stood at the counter folding linen napkins into crisp squares. Her hair was grayer than I recalled her smile missing. She flicked her eyes at the kids, then returned to her napkins as if they were her only anchor. My father lingered by the dining room window, swirling his whiskey like he expected someone more significant to show up. Lucas, my younger brother, was already halfway through his drink, feet propped on Dad's leather chair, debating basketball with Uncle Mark. Same as ever. His wife, Emily, perched on the chair's arm, her laugh sharp and relentless like she was reaching for something. I cleared my throat. Happy Thanksgiving! Ethan placed the pie on the counter carefully. We brought dessert. Silence followed. It was Sarah, my sister, 3 years younger, and always the peacemaker, who finally spoke. Hey, Mia. Sorry we weren't sure you'd make it. I blinked. You invited me. Sarah shrugged, her smile fragile. Well, Lucas thought you might have other plans. It's been hectic. Sophie tugged my sleeve softly. Where do we sit, Mommy? I glanced at the dining room. 10 chairs, napkins, folded name cards, and Emily's flowing script. 10 plates, 1 long table. I counted again. No kids' table, no booster seats, no spare chairs from the basement like every other year. Just 10. Sarah caught my gaze and coughed lightly. We thought the kids could eat in the living room. There's pizza and a movie. It'll be fun for them. Ethan stayed quiet, but he'd already noticed. No one asked how we were. No one mentioned the new condo or if I needed help with Sophie's schoolwork. I expected little, but I hoped for something. I scanned the room, my childhood home, my parents, my siblings, and it struck me I'd arrived as a guest they weren't sure they'd welcomed. Sophie's hand stayed in mine. I didn't squeeze back yet. I settled the kids in the living room. Pizza on paper plates. 1 worn blanket across 2 small laps. The fun table, they called it, but no one asked if they wanted to be there. I lingered, smoothing Sophie's hair, adjusting Ethan's sweater. His eyes held mine. When are we going home? He whispered. Soon, I said. Not yet. Back in the kitchen, the whiskey flowed freer. My father chuckled at something Lucas said. Mom opened another bottle of white wine, avoiding my gaze. I set the casserole beside a tray of untouched deviled eggs. I think we'll leave after dessert, I said into a pause. No one looked up. Then Lucas raised his glass. Busy mom life, huh? Always rushing. Emily giggled. We get it. Single parent stuff. She said it like she'd never needed a favor. She said it like I wasn't standing 3 feet away. I straightened. My voice stayed steady, landing soft. Actually, I need to say something. That got their attention. Emily's smile froze. Sarah set her glass down. I'm stepping back, I said from everything. The grocery money, the phone bill for Mom's house, the extras. My father's face shifted, a brief flicker of confusion, like someone had rearranged his desk. I thought you wanted to, Sarah said quietly. I did. I nodded. And I still care. But I can't carry it all anymore, Lucas scoffed. Since when is chipping in for cable carrying anything? I looked at him. He hadn't paid his credit card in 8 years. My parents still covered his phone plan, but I didn't say it. I'm doing what's best for me and the kids, I said instead. That's all. No one thanked me for what I'd done. No one asked why now. My mother finally spoke. We never asked you to. The silence that followed wasn't tense. It was done. I picked up Sophie's jacket from a chair and folded it under my arm. Ethan met me in the hallway, pizza crust in hand. Are we leaving? I looked past the coats, past the photo frames, unchanged for a decade. My face wasn't in any. Not yet, I said again, but something had already gone. We drove home in near silence. The kids dozed in the back heads, leaning toward each other, still smelling of buttery crust and maple. The car was warm, but I cracked the window. I needed the chill to stay sharp. The condo was quiet when we stepped in. Too quiet. The kind that once felt empty, but tonight felt like relief. Ethan kicked off his shoes in the hallway, then backtracked to align them neatly. I used to remind him. Now he reminded himself. Sophie climbed into my lap on the couch without asking. Her face pressed into my sweater sticky with icing and something unsaid. "Did we do something wrong?" she mumbled, voice muffled. I didn't answer right away. I smoothed her hair, counted her breaths. "No, baby," I said finally. "We don't always choose how others treat us, but we choose what we hold close." She pulled back eyes serious. "Do we still love them?" The question held no anger, just a child's curiosity about adult letdowns. "I think love can stay," I said, "even if we visit less." Ethan had curled into the blanket beside us, eyes open but distant. He hadn't asked for hugs in years, but he leaned his head against my arm, and that was enough. We sat there, no TV, no noise, just our quiet rhythm. On the coffee table, I saw the paper Sophie had drawn earlier that week. 3 stick figures holding hands under a lopsided sun. She'd written our names in wobbly blue marker. Ethan, Sophie, Mom. No grandparents, no cousins, no one missing, no one extra. I didn't fix it. I didn't add to it. I just grabbed a magnet and pinned it to the fridge where we'd see it every morning. Outside, the wind swept the last leaves across the sidewalk. Inside, we were right where we belonged. The first missed call came on Wednesday. Sarah, then 2 from my mother, 1 from an unknown number. I knew it was Dad. He never saved his own contact. I didn't answer. Voicemails piled up like unopened bills, short-clipped. No apologies, just sentence fragments with nowhere to land. "Hey, Mia. Just checking if you got home. The kids seemed fine. We're dealing with some house stuff. Nothing big, just would be good to talk. Your father says hi." By Saturday, Emily sent a message via Instagram. Not even a text. "Hey, heads up. Lucas is in trouble. Might be good for the family to meet. Let me know when you can come by. Not how are you. Not we miss you. Just heads up." That night, I stood in the kitchen phone face down, lights low. Ethan was asleep on the couch, a library book slipping from his chest. Sophie was humming in the bathtub, replaying her favorite song from memory. I leaned against the counter, watching the red notification light pulse like a heartbeat. I didn't play the messages. I didn't need to. They weren't reaching out because they valued me. They were reaching out because something broke. The next day, Sarah showed up. No call ahead, just knocked holding a paper bag of bagels like we were still in college, like this was still Sunday brunch before life got messy. She looked worn, mascara-smudged eyes, restless. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She didn't sit, just lingered by the counter, toying with a mug that didn't need cleaning. "It's Lucas," she said. "He did something dumb, and now Mom and Dad are, well, not great." I waited. She glanced at me cautious. "They could use your help sorting this out." There it was. Not let's talk. Not we're sorry, just the unspoken expectation that I fix things. But I wasn't taking that role anymore. "I'm glad you came," I said softly. "I really am." Her shoulders lifted with brief hope. "But I'm not the one they should call." Sarah didn't argue, just stared at the mug, then nodded like something had settled. Before she left, she looked around the condo. "You've really made this place home." I didn't tell her the kids had done most of that. I didn't hear from them for 5 days. Then the emails started. Not to me, Ethan's school, Sophie's preschool. Both listed my parents as emergency contacts, both flagged for unpaid fees. Then a call from my old bank manager. I still had alerts from when I managed Dad's car loan during his recovery years back. "Just a courtesy," she said. "Your father added someone new to the account last month. There's been activity." Activity. That's how they say someone withdrew $19,000 in 2 weeks. The someone was Lucas. He'd borrowed against the house, then tapped Dad's credit line for a failed startup, some tech gamble with no records, no strategy, just bravado. And now the consequences were closing in. Mom texted a long message. "Not angry, just scattered. If you have any time, we could use help with the bank." You always had a way with words. They listened to you more than us. No mention of Thanksgiving. No mention of the casserole I brought like a truce. Just, we need you. I stared at the text for a long time. The next day, Sarah sent a photo. The front porch of the house, paint peeling, a foreclosure notice taped to the door like a badge of shame. No caption. She didn't need one. That night, Ethan heard me stacking dishes louder than I meant to. He wandered in, rubbing his eyes. "They're in trouble, huh?" he asked. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, they are." He looked at the floor toes curling against the cold tile. "Are we going to help them?" I knelt beside him, hand on his back. "We're going to do what's best for us. That's what I promised." He leaned into me, small and warm and trusting. In the past, I'd have been across town by now, laptop open, crisis plan, drafted, bank on hold. But I stayed there on the kitchen floor, holding my son, watching the kettle steam. They had built a fragile world around Lucas, convinced he could do no wrong. And now it was breaking, and they wanted me to fix it, but I had stopped bringing solutions to a place I wasn't invited to sit. Sarah called again on a Saturday morning, earlier than usual. I was sorting laundry, the sun barely up. The kids were still asleep. Her voice was flat. No preamble. They might lose the house this week. I paused, holding one of Ethan's shirts, the one with the faded spaceship. "What do you want me to do, Sarah?" She didn't answer right away. "Finally, just come by. Talk to them. Maybe they'll listen if you're there." I almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. She kept talking. "They don't need money. They need help negotiating. Your steady voice. Your reason. My steady voice. My reason." The things they called overbearing, distant, too practical until now. I said I'd think about it. That evening she showed up again unannounced. No bagels this time, just her presence and a folder. Inside, statements, letters, a scribbled note from Mom that looked more like a to-do list than a request. "I'm just the messenger," she said quickly. "Don't shoot me." "I'm not angry," I said and meant it. She took a breath. "Look, I know it hasn't been fair. I know they've leaned on you more than anyone." I waited. "But they're still family, and we're in deep. You know how it looks if the house goes. The neighbors talk. The community talks." There it was. Not fear of losing a home, fear of losing status. Sarah looked at me, searching for our old connection. "You always kept things together." I closed the folder gently. "I'm not angry," I repeated, "but I'm done being useful only when it costs me." Sarah didn't argue, not really, but her voice shifted. "So that's it," she said, too casual. "You're just done." It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. "I'm not done," I said. "I just stopped showing up where I'm not welcome." She stood there, shoulders tense, then left the folder on the counter anyway. "Just in case," she murmured. I didn't walk her to the door. Later that night, I found Sophie asleep in my bed, curled into the blankets like a secret. I didn't move her. I lay beside her, watching the moonlight through the blinds, quiet as snow. The next time the doorbell rang, it was my father. I hadn't seen him since Thanksgiving. He looked older, frailer, the kind of tired sleep couldn't fix. He held his cap in his hands like a nervous kid. Said my name once soft. "Can I come in?" I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. He didn't sit, just paced a little, eyeing the family photos on the wall. Ethan's spelling bee Sophie in her Halloween pilot costume. "You've done well," he said. I waited. He sighed. "Your brother, he wasn't ready. We didn't see it. I let the silence sit, let him feel it." He glanced at me. "Your mother wanted to come, but she's ashamed." I offered, not unkindly. He didn't deny it. "We never meant to push you out," he said. "It just got messy. Your choices made things harder." Your choices. The old refrain. The decisions I made to protect myself, now framed as burdens they never asked for. "I didn't come to argue," he added quickly. "Just to ask if there's anything at all you could do to help us hold on." I looked at him. Really looked. This man taught me to write a bike budget, a paycheck, give a firm handshake, but never how to ask for help without hiding behind pride. "You built a system," I said slowly, "where I didn't belong unless I was useful. And now you want me back, not because you miss me, but because the system broke." He opened his mouth, closed it. I stepped closer, not to comfort, but to be clear. "I was there," I said. "Every holiday, every bill, every crisis. You just didn't see me. He didn't speak. I was there, I repeated. You just saw easier when I was gone. The silence that followed was different. He didn't try to fill it. When he left, he didn't take the folder Sarah left. He didn't say goodbye, just nodded and closed the door. I stood there for a while, then I turned off the porch light. Winter settled in quietly that year. The holidays passed with fewer calls, no invitations, no group texts. The silence wasn't sharp. It was chosen. I didn't decorate much, just a few lights around the window and a small tree Ethan and Sophie picked out. Plastic ornaments, paper snowflakes from school. It was enough. One morning just after New Year's, I opened the mailbox and found a handwritten letter. No return address. It was from my mother. 3 pages tight, cursive, not quite an apology, not quite anything. Mostly memories, vague regrets, one line standing out. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just didn't know where you fit anymore. I folded the letter back into its envelope and tucked it in a drawer beside the pins and spare keys. I didn't throw it away. I just didn't read it again. A week later, Ethan asked if we could change the hallway wall. What do you mean, I asked? He pointed at the old photos. School concerts, birthdays, a few with my siblings when we thought growing up meant staying close. We could make it just us now, he said. So we did. We took every frame down, dusted them, and started over. Mia, Ethan, Sophie. Park outings, library awards, Halloween pilots. One photo showed the 3 of us on the couch, arms tangled, laughing at something only we understood. That one I printed large. I hung it in the hallway centered. No caption, no extra names, just us. A few days later, Sarah texted. The house sold. Mom and Dad moved in with Lucas for now. It's messy, but maybe it's better this way. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to explain. That night, after the kids slept, I made tea and sat by the window. The porch light stayed off. I watched the street stay still. I watched nothing happen, and for the first time in years, I didn't brace for the next knock. I didn't justify myself. I didn't leave a forwarding address. If you've ever had to rebuild your story without explaining why, just leave a light off. We'll understand. Sitting by the window, tea cooling in my hands, I realized the weight I'd carried wasn't just theirs, it was mine too. I'd spent years chasing a place at their table, believing love meant fixing their messes, filling their silences. But love doesn't demand you shrink to fit. It doesn't ask you to trade your peace for their approval. I learned that family isn't a debt you owe forever. It's a choice you make daily. Walking away didn't mean I stopped caring. It meant I started valuing myself. Ethan and Sophie's laughter, their small hands in mine, showed me home isn't a house you return to. It's the one you build with those who see you. I learned to let go of guilt for choosing us first, to stop waiting for apologies that might never come. The porch light stayed off not out of anger, but clarity. I couldn't control their choices, but I could control mine. And in that quiet, I found freedom not in cutting ties, but in tying them differently with boundaries that let us breathe. We were enough just as we were.
The Christmas tree lights cast a warm glow across my parents' living room where 31 family members had gathered for our traditional holiday celebration. Wrapping paper scattered the floor around the massive tree, and the familiar sounds of children playing with new toys mixed with adult conversations about work, travel plans, and New Year's resolutions. I sat on the sofa near the fireplace, quietly opening presents and listening to the comfortable chaos that defined these annual gatherings. My sister Amanda, 35 and perpetually confident about her business acumen despite a series of failed ventures, stood near the mantelpiece addressing the room like she was making an important announcement to assembled shareholders. She wore an expensive red dress that complemented her carefully styled hair and professional makeup, maintaining the polished appearance she'd cultivated since completing her real estate license program 18 months ago. Before we finish opening presents, I have some exciting family news to share, Amanda declared, raising her wine glass to ensure she had everyone's complete attention. The room gradually quieted as relatives turned from their conversations to focus on her presentation. I've made a major decision about the family's real estate investments that will benefit everyone involved. I continued unwrapping a book from my aunt while listening to Amanda's build-up with the patient attention I'd learned to maintain during her frequent announcements about new business opportunities and strategic initiatives. At 32, I developed the habit of staying calm and observant during family gatherings, particularly when Amanda was preparing to reveal one of her entrepreneurial plans. As you all know, Kevin owns that little duplex rental property on Maple Street, Amanda continued, gesturing toward me with her wine glass. It's been generating steady income for a few years, but honestly it's not being managed to its full potential. The property could be producing significantly more revenue with proper marketing, tenant screening and maintenance coordination. My cousin Robert, who worked in commercial real estate development, nodded with obvious interest. Property management is definitely specialized work. Are you talking about taking over the management responsibilities? Amanda's smile broadened as she prepared to reveal what she clearly considered a masterful solution to underutilized family assets. Actually, I've decided to take full ownership of the property. Kevin's never been particularly interested in real estate investment strategies, and I have the professional expertise and time to maximize the property's value. The casual announcement of property theft hung in the air for a moment before several relatives began murmuring approval. My Uncle Tom, who owned 2 rental properties in the suburbs, actually nodded with appreciation. That makes a lot of sense. Real estate requires active management and industry knowledge. That rental property is mine now, Amanda declared with obvious satisfaction. Finally, someone who understands real estate management instead of just collecting checks. The room erupted in enthusiastic support for Amanda's decision. My mother clapped her hands together with genuine delight. This is wonderful. Amanda has such a good head for business, and Kevin's always been more interested in his government work than property management. My father nodded approvingly from his recliner near the tree. Smart family planning. Why let a valuable asset sit underutilized when someone with real expertise can maximize its potential? Cousin Jennifer, who had recently completed her MBA, looked genuinely impressed. That's excellent strategic thinking, Amanda. Property ownership requires dedicated attention and professional management skills that not everyone possesses. I opened presents quietly and peacefully, maintaining my calm expression while listening to the family's overwhelming support for Amanda's announcement. They had no way of knowing that my little duplex was registered with the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network as a monitored asset under federal security protocols, or that any unauthorized ownership transfers would trigger automatic investigation procedures. Amanda had just announced her intention to commit federal property fraud involving assets belonging to someone with top-secret security clearance. What the family saw as practical resource allocation was actually a confession to serious federal crimes that would result in years of federal prison time and permanent criminal records. My work as a senior intelligence analyst with the Department of Homeland Security's Financial Intelligence Unit required comprehensive disclosure and monitoring of all personal assets, including real estate investments. The duplex had been purchased through official channels with full federal oversight, and its ownership was protected under multiple security protocols designed to prevent exploitation or compromise of sensitive government personnel. The property transfer paperwork is already in progress, Amanda continued, basking in the family's admiration for her business initiative. I've been working with a real estate attorney to handle all the legal details. Kevin doesn't need to worry about any of the complicated procedures. My grandmother, who had always worried about my financial planning and investment decisions, reached over to pat my hand with obvious relief. This is such a blessing, dear. Amanda will take good care of the property and make sure it generates proper income for the family. Uncle Tom raised his beer bottle in an impromptu toast. Here's to Amanda's real estate expertise and Kevin's contribution to family wealth building. Smart asset management benefits everyone. The extended family joined the toast with genuine enthusiasm, celebrating what they believed was an example of effective family cooperation and strategic resource utilization. I was surrounded by 31 relatives who had just applauded federal property fraud while congratulating both the perpetrator and the victim. The current tenants are month to month, so I'll be able to implement proper lease agreements and market rate pricing immediately, Amanda explained with obvious professional pride. I'm already researching comparable rental rates in the neighborhood, and I believe we can increase the monthly income by at least 40%. Cousin Robert leaned forward with clear interest in Amanda's business strategy. What's your timeline for the ownership transfer and management transition? Everything should be finalized by the end of January, Amanda replied confidently. The legal documentation is straightforward since it's staying within the family. I've already started marketing the property to higher quality tenant prospects. The conversation continued with Amanda receiving detailed questions about her management plans, renovation ideas, and income projections. She had clearly researched the local rental market and prepared comprehensive answers about property improvements, tenant screening procedures, and long-term investment strategies. What she hadn't researched were the federal laws governing unauthorized transfer of monitored government employee assets, or the automatic investigation protocols triggered when protected property shows signs of potential compromise or fraud. As the evening progressed, Amanda continued receiving congratulations and business advice from various family members. She explained her marketing strategy for finding premium tenants, described her plans for property improvements that would justify higher rent, and shared her vision for expanding into additional real estate investments using the duplex as a foundation. After the presents were opened and dinner was served, Amanda pulled me aside in the kitchen while other family members were watching football and playing with children's new toys. She was slightly flushed with wine and the excitement of family approval, and her earlier professional confidence had shifted into something more genuinely enthusiastic about her real estate venture. "Kevin, I know this might seem sudden, but I've been thinking about this property transition for months," she said, adopting the patient tone she used when explaining business concepts to people she considered less sophisticated about financial matters. "You've never shown real interest in property management or real estate investment strategies, and I have the professional training and industry connections to maximize the asset's potential." I continued drying dishes and loading them into the cabinet, maintaining my peaceful demeanor. "I'm sure you've put considerable thought into all aspects of this decision, Amanda." She seemed encouraged by my calm response and lack of objection to her unauthorized property seizure. "Exactly. This is really beneficial for both of us and the entire family. You can focus on your government work without worrying about tenant issues, maintenance problems, or market fluctuations. I'll handle all the complex management responsibilities and make sure the property generates optimal returns." I hung up the dish towel and turned to face her directly. "I hope your real estate venture proceeds according to your expectations, Amanda." Her smile widened with obvious relief that I wasn't going to create family drama by objecting to her perfectly reasonable business arrangement. "I knew you'd understand once you thought about it logically. The property transfer will be handled professionally through proper legal channels, and I'll make sure you receive detailed reports about income and expenses." Monday morning arrived with the crisp December air that made Washington, D.C. feel particularly official and governmental. I arrived at the Department of Homeland Security building by 7:20 a.m. to begin another week of analyzing financial intelligence reports related to terrorist financing networks and money laundering operations targeting critical infrastructure. My position as a senior intelligence analyst required maintaining comprehensive awareness of financial crime patterns that might indicate threats to national security. The work involved coordinating with FBI counterterrorism units, Treasury Department financial intelligence divisions, and CIA analysts tracking international money flows that could support hostile activities against the United States. At 10:33 a.m., my secure phone buzzed with a call from my immediate supervisor, Deputy Director Sarah Martinez, who oversaw our financial intelligence analysis section and maintained direct communication with senior leadership about potential security threats. "Kevin, I need you in my office immediately," Deputy Director Martinez said with the tone that indicated a significant security matter had developed overnight. "We've detected unauthorized activity involving your personal assets that triggered automatic threat assessment protocols." I walked through the secured corridors to Deputy Director Martinez's office, passing the classified briefing rooms where other analysts were preparing intelligence reports for senior policymakers. Her office featured reinforced windows overlooking the Potomac River and sophisticated communication equipment for coordinating with other federal agencies. "Sit down," Deputy Director Martinez said, activating additional security measures that ensured complete privacy for sensitive conversations. "Our automated monitoring systems flagged attempted ownership transfer of your rental property by someone claiming family authorization." She opened a classified file containing copies of legal documents that showed Amanda's signature alongside forged versions of my signature on property transfer agreements. The transfer was initiated by Amanda Johnson, who represented herself as your authorized family representative with power of attorney to handle real estate transactions. I reviewed the documents, which clearly showed Amanda had submitted comprehensive paperwork to transfer ownership of my duplex to herself, including falsified authorization documents and fraudulent property transfer agreements with multiple government agencies. Deputy Director Martinez, Amanda Johnson is my sister. I did not authorize her to transfer ownership of my property or represent herself as my legal representative for any real estate transactions. Her expression shifted from procedural concern to serious security focus as the implications became clear. So this is property fraud targeting a senior intelligence analyst with access to classified financial intelligence. That triggers immediate FBI involvement and potential national security investigation protocols. She secured the documents in the classified file. Kevin, I need to ask directly. Did you have any knowledge of your sister's property transfer activities or any discussions about family real estate arrangements? I learned about Amanda's intentions at our family Christmas gathering when she announced to 31 relatives that she was taking ownership of my property. Most family members congratulated her on her business acumen and strategic resource utilization. Deputy Director Martinez stared at me with the expression of someone who had overseen financial intelligence operations for 12 years and still encountered new examples of criminal behavior combined with complete ignorance about federal security protocols. She announced federal property fraud at a family Christmas party with multiple witnesses present. 31 witnesses heard her declare ownership of my monitored federal asset. Several relatives specifically praised her for understanding real estate management better than I did. She reached for her secure phone to initiate coordination with federal law enforcement agencies. Kevin, this requires immediate federal investigation under enhanced security protocols. Property fraud targeting intelligence personnel could indicate broader security threats or compromise attempts. At 2:45 p.m., Special Agent Michael Sullivan from the FBI's Counterintelligence Division arrived at DHS headquarters to coordinate the federal investigation. Agent Sullivan specialized in cases involving potential threats to intelligence personnel and had extensive experience with crimes targeting government employees with access to classified information. Agent Johnson, I understand your sister has attempted unauthorized transfer of your monitored property, Agent Sullivan said as we met in a secure conference room equipped with additional counterintelligence protection measures. Given your access to sensitive financial intelligence, we need to determine whether this represents isolated criminal behavior or potential hostile targeting of intelligence personnel. I provided a detailed account of Amanda's Christmas announcement and the family's enthusiastic support for her property seizure plan. Agent Sullivan took comprehensive notes and asked specific questions about family members who had knowledge of my government employment and security clearance status. This could represent either simple criminal fraud or a more sophisticated compromise attempt using family members as unwitting assets, Agent Sullivan observed after reviewing my statement. We'll need to conduct comprehensive investigation of your sister's activities, associates, and potential connections to hostile intelligence services. He closed his notebook and looked at me with the serious expression reserved for potential national security threats. We'll be executing federal search warrants at your sister's residence and business locations within the next 2 hours. Given the national security implications, this investigation will proceed under enhanced protocols with full counterintelligence support. At 5:12 p.m. my personal cell phone rang. Amanda's name appeared on the screen. Kevin, federal agents just surrounded my house with black SUVs and official badges. Her voice was panicked and confused. They're saying I committed federal crimes involving national security violations and property fraud targeting intelligence personnel. I was completing my daily intelligence reports and preparing classified briefings for tomorrow's coordination meeting with FBI counterterrorism analysts. Through my office window, I could see other federal employees leaving the building after completing their Monday casework and security reviews. That sounds very serious and concerning, Amanda. What specifically are the federal agents telling you? They have warrants for everything. My computers, business records, financial documents, and correspondence. Her voice was becoming increasingly shrill with fear. They're asking about property fraud, unauthorized asset transfers, and potential compromise of classified personnel. 4 federal agents had indeed arrived at Amanda's residence at 5:07 p.m. 2 FBI agents from the Counterintelligence Division, 1 DHS investigator from our Internal Security Section, and 1 Treasury Department criminal investigator. They carried comprehensive federal warrants authorizing seizure of all materials related to the property fraud and potential security violations. "Amanda," I said calmly, maintaining the same professional tone I used when briefing senior policymakers about national security threats, "you announced at Christmas that you were taking ownership of my property without authorization. That constitutes federal property fraud targeting a senior intelligence analyst with access to classified financial intelligence systems. But it's just family real estate management. I thought family members could help each other with property investments. Federal law doesn't recognize family relationships as authorization for fraudulent property transfers involving monitored government assets. You committed serious federal crimes targeting someone with access to sensitive national security intelligence, which triggers enhanced penalties and mandatory counterintelligence investigation." The line was quiet except for her increasingly panicked breathing and the sound of federal agents explaining comprehensive search procedures and national security protocols. "Kevin, you have to stop this. Tell them this was all family cooperation and business planning." "I cannot stop a federal investigation with national security implications, Amanda. You committed federal property fraud targeting classified intelligence personnel, admitted to those crimes in front of 31 witnesses, and potentially compromised security monitoring systems designed to protect sensitive government operations." Agent Sullivan's voice could be heard in the background, explaining federal arrest procedures and the enhanced penalties that apply when crimes target intelligence personnel with access to classified information. "They're asking about my real estate clients, business associates, and anyone who might have knowledge about your government work," Amanda said, her voice breaking as the full scope of her situation became apparent. "They want to know if anyone encouraged me to target your property specifically. Amanda, you should cooperate fully with federal agents and retain qualified federal criminal defense counsel immediately," I replied using the same measured tone I employed when coordinating with law enforcement agencies about sensitive intelligence matters. "Providing false information about crimes targeting national security personnel will result in additional charges for obstruction of justice and false statements to federal investigators." At 7:18 p.m., Amanda was formally arrested and charged with federal property fraud, wire fraud, attempted theft of monitored government assets, and violations of federal security protocols protecting intelligence personnel. She was processed at the federal detention facility and held under enhanced security procedures pending arraignment. The charges were comprehensive and carried severe penalties. Property fraud targeting intelligence personnel triggers enhanced sentencing guidelines designed to protect national security operations. Wire fraud involving monitored government assets carries potential sentences of up to 20 years in federal prison. The security protocol violations added additional penalties because Amanda had potentially compromised systems designed to protect classified intelligence personnel. The real estate attorney Amanda had hired to process the fraudulent property transfer faced immediate investigation for their role in facilitating crimes against intelligence personnel. Their law license was suspended pending federal investigation, and their practice was shut down while authorities determined the extent of their knowledge about the property fraud scheme. Amanda's real estate license was immediately revoked when state authorities learned of her arrest on federal charges involving property fraud and potential national security violations. Her real estate practice was permanently closed, and her professional liability insurance was voided due to criminal activity. My family's reaction was predictably supportive of Amanda and critical of the federal government's overreaction to what they still characterized as family property planning, rather than serious federal crimes with national security implications. My mother called repeatedly, demanding that I fix this situation, by explaining to my supervisors that Amanda's actions were motivated by family cooperation rather than criminal intent. She couldn't understand that federal property fraud cases involving intelligence personnel require mandatory prosecution regardless of family relationships or claimed motivations. At Amanda's federal arraignment, she appeared in federal court wearing detention clothing and looking exhausted from her time in enhanced security holding. Her court-appointed federal defender advised her that the charges were extremely serious and carried mandatory minimum sentences due to the national security implications. Federal prosecutors presented extensive evidence including Amanda's recorded admissions at the Christmas gathering, testimony from 31 witnesses who heard her announce the property fraud, detailed financial records showing the attempted unauthorized transfer, and expert testimony from DHS officials explaining federal monitoring systems and security protocols. The federal judge denied bail entirely, citing national security concerns, flight risk, and the potential for additional criminal activity targeting intelligence personnel. Amanda would remain in federal detention until trial, which was scheduled under expedited procedures due to the counterintelligence implications. During pretrial investigation, federal agents discovered that Amanda had researched my government employment and security clearance status more extensively than she had initially admitted. Her computer records showed searches for information about DHS personnel, federal employee asset monitoring, and methods for transferring government employee property. The additional evidence suggested potential premeditation and raised questions about whether Amanda's actions represented isolated criminal behavior or part of a broader scheme to compromise intelligence personnel through family exploitation. 12 weeks later, facing overwhelming evidence and potential sentences exceeding 15 years in federal prison, Amanda accepted a plea agreement to avoid even longer sentences after trial. She received 6 years in federal prison followed by 5 years supervised probation with permanent restrictions on real estate activities. The federal judge ordered restitution of $134,000 to cover federal investigation costs, counterintelligence review expenses, enhanced security protocol implementation, and administrative costs for comprehensive background reinvestigation of potentially compromised intelligence personnel. During sentencing, federal prosecutors explained that crimes targeting intelligence personnel carry enhanced penalties because they potentially compromise national security operations and require extensive counterintelligence investigations to ensure classified information remains protected. My position at DHS was unaffected by Amanda's criminal activity, though my security clearance underwent comprehensive review and my asset monitoring was significantly enhanced as a standard precautionary measure. Federal security officials conducted extensive counterintelligence investigations to ensure that Amanda's crimes hadn't compromised any classified operations or intelligence sources. The family Christmas tradition was permanently altered after numerous relatives received federal subpoenas as material witnesses in national security proceedings. Uncle Tom, Cousin Robert, and 12 other family members were required to provide detailed testimony about Amanda's admissions and the family's reaction to her criminal announcements. Several relatives faced their own security investigations when background researchers discovered that other family members had made inappropriate inquiries about my government work, security clearance requirements, and federal employee benefits over the years. I continue working at DHS analyzing financial intelligence related to national security threats and terrorist financing operations. My duplex remains registered under enhanced federal monitoring as a protected asset subject to the highest levels of security oversight. The difference is that family gatherings are now limited to immediate family members who have undergone security interviews and signed agreements about appropriate conduct regarding my employment and assets. Amanda won't be eligible for release until she serves her complete federal sentence under enhanced supervision. My parents occasionally request that I provide financial assistance for Amanda's legal fees and commissary expenses. I explain that federal employees cannot provide financial support to family members convicted of crimes targeting intelligence personnel, and that any such assistance would jeopardize national security and result in severe career consequences. They don't understand that Amanda's conviction permanently restricts her from real estate activities, professional licensing, and most forms of business employment due to the national security implications of her crimes. Last month I received a letter from Amanda at the Federal Correctional Facility where she's serving her enhanced security sentence. She wrote that she's beginning to understand the severity of targeting intelligence personnel with property fraud, but she still doesn't comprehend why family property management resulted in federal prison and permanent career destruction. I haven't responded to the letter. Federal employees are prohibited from maintaining correspondence with individuals convicted of crimes targeting intelligence personnel, and my security clearance requires complete avoidance of contact with compromised family members who have threatened national security operations. Family Christmas celebrations are now limited to security-cleared immediate relatives who understand the restrictions surrounding my employment and assets. The duplex continues generating rental income under enhanced federal protection, exactly as it should for property belonging to someone with access to classified financial intelligence. Amanda's real estate career ended permanently with her federal conviction for targeting intelligence personnel. Her attempted property fraud was added to federal databases as evidence of potential compromise attempts against classified government operations. Some lessons about national security law and the consequences of targeting intelligence personnel can only be learned through federal imprisonment and permanent security restrictions. Amanda is receiving comprehensive education about the enhanced penalties that apply when family members attempt to exploit or compromise classified government personnel. The property remains exactly where it belongs, under the highest levels of federal protection as a monitored asset belonging to someone with access to sensitive national security intelligence systems. The evening had started like any other Friday night at Bella Vista. The dining room buzzed with the comfortable energy of weekend dinner service, servers weaving between tables with practiced efficiency while the kitchen maintained its steady rhythm of orders and preparation. I was expediting plates when my sister Rachel burst through the front entrance like she owned the place. Which according to her she now did. "Where is she?" Rachel's voice cut through the restaurant's ambient noise as she scanned the dining room. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floors with sharp authority, drawing curious glances from customers who were trying to enjoy their osso buco and wine pairings. I emerged from behind the pass with 2 plates of our signature seafood risotto, nodding to table 12 before addressing my sister's dramatic entrance. The familiar knot in my stomach tightened as I recognized the expression on her face, the same predatory confidence she'd worn when claiming my college acceptance letter belonged in her portfolio, or when explaining to our parents why my high school boyfriend should really be dating someone more suited to his potential. "Rachel, we're in the middle of dinner service. Can this wait?" "No, it cannot wait." She pulled a leather folder from her designer purse and slammed it down on the nearest empty table hard enough to make the water glasses jump. "We need to talk. Now." The servers exchanged glances, recognizing the family drama that had been building for weeks. Rachel had been making increasingly frequent visits to Bella Vista, each time with more pointed questions about operations, finances, and what she called management decisions that affect the family. She'd started appearing during lunch rushes, taking photos of customer lines, timing table turnover rates, and making notes on her phone about what she termed optimization opportunities. "I'm working," I said simply, picking up the next 2 plates from the pass. "Table 6 has been waiting for their entrees. Someone else can handle table 6. Rachel's voice carried the imperious tone she'd perfected during her MBA program at Wharton, the same voice she used when explaining market dynamics to our father or correcting our mother's investment strategy. "This is about the future of this restaurant and, by extension, the future of our family's investment portfolio." I delivered the plates to table 6 with an apologetic smile, noting how the elderly couple tried to pretend they weren't listening to our increasingly public dispute. When I returned, Rachel had stationed herself directly in my path between the kitchen and dining room, her arms crossed in the power pose she'd learned during business school leadership seminars. "Rachel, you're interfering with service. Whatever this is about can wait until tomorrow. Tomorrow will be too late." She opened her folder with theatrical precision, revealing what appeared to be a comprehensive business analysis complete with pie charts, competitive benchmarking studies, and financial projections. "I've been researching the restaurant industry for the past 6 weeks, and I've identified several critical problems with how this place is being managed." The folder contained spreadsheets comparing our pricing to competitors within a 5-mile radius, market research about customer demographic trends, and highlighted sections about operational efficiency metrics. She'd clearly invested significant time and probably consulting fees into preparing for this confrontation. "The profit margins are suboptimal," she announced, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "The menu pricing is too conservative by at least 15%, the wine markup is below industry standard by 12 points, and the staffing model is inefficient compared to comparable establishments." Her numbers were specific enough to sound authoritative, delivered with the confidence that had convinced venture capital firms to fund her previous startup attempts before they inevitably collapsed under the weight of her management style. Our head server, Maria, approached with a concerned expression. She'd been working at Bella Vista since we opened 3 years ago, had learned to read the rhythms of service and the personalities of regular customers with professional precision. "Excuse me, but table 14 is asking about their appetizers and table 3 needs more wine." "I'll be right there," I told her, but Rachel stepped sideways to maintain her blockade of the service corridor. "No, you won't. Because we're going to resolve this management crisis right now, in front of everyone." Rachel's voice rose another decibel, her business school training evident in the way she projected authority through volume and positioning. "This restaurant has been mismanaged for too long, and it's affecting the family's return on investment." The dining room's conversation levels began to drop as customers turned their attention to the unfolding drama. I could see the discomfort on their faces, the way they glanced between their meals and our increasingly public dispute, some reaching for phones to record what was clearly becoming dinner theater. "Rachel, please. Not here. Not now. These people are trying to enjoy their evening." "Here. Yes, now." She pulled out a document that looked official and impressive, complete with legal letterhead and embossed seals. "I've had proper legal documents prepared by Morrison, Blake and Associates. As of today, I'm assuming operational control of Bella Vista pursuant to the family partnership agreement established at inception." The claim was delivered with such absolute confidence that even I felt momentarily confused. Rachel had always possessed an uncanny ability to present her desires as established facts, but this performance was particularly audacious and well-prepared. "What family partnership agreement?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer would involve selective interpretation of conversations and creative legal documentation. "The agreement established when Mom and Dad invested in this venture 3 years ago." She held up the document like it was a Supreme Court ruling. "This restaurant was established as a family business with shared ownership, shared responsibility and shared decision-making authority." The logic was familiar from countless family gatherings over the years. Rachel would identify something she wanted, frame it as a family necessity, hold meetings with carefully selected participants, and present the results as unanimous democratic decisions that had somehow bypassed the actual affected parties. "I wasn't party to any such agreement," I pointed out, "because you were too focused on cooking and serving customers to pay attention to the business fundamentals." Rachel's smile was sharp and satisfied, the expression she wore when explaining why her version of events was the only reasonable interpretation. "The family has been patient with your management approach, but patience has its limits when money is involved." Behind me, I could hear the kitchen calling out that orders were backing up. In front of me, Rachel stood with her legal-looking documents and her absolute certainty that she had the right to take control of everything I'd built over the past 3 years. "Rachel, you don't understand how this business works." "I understand how all businesses work. That's what my MBA taught me, along with 3 years of consulting experience and 2 successful startup exits." She gestured around the dining room with proprietary confidence, her movement encompassing not just the physical space but everything it represented. "This place could be generating twice the revenue with proper management. Professional management based on data rather than intuition." A customer at table 8 raised his hand tentatively, trying to get attention for what was probably a simple request about salad dressing or wine pairings. The normal rhythm of service was completely disrupted by Rachel's performance, creating the kind of uncomfortable atmosphere that could damage our reputation with regular customers. "The family has been patient," she continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the restaurant. "We've watched you stumble through running this place for 3 years, making emotional decisions instead of data-driven ones, prioritizing customer experience over profit maximization. But the patience has run out." She opened her folder to reveal what appeared to be detailed financial projections, operational restructuring plans and competitive analysis reports. Her preparation was impressive in its thoroughness, even if her fundamental premises were completely wrong. "I've already identified $47,000 in annual savings through staff optimization," she announced, consulting her spreadsheets like a management consultant presenting to a board of directors. "At least $73,000 in additional revenue through menu pricing corrections, wine program enhancements and table turnover efficiency improvements." The numbers were specific enough to sound authoritative, delivered with the confidence that had convinced our parents that Rachel's business degree made her qualified to manage everything from family finances to career decisions for her siblings. "You've been too comfortable," Rachel said, stepping closer with the aggressive body language she'd learned during negotiation seminars. Making decent money playing at being a restaurateur, but not maximizing the potential of the family's investment. That comfortable mediocrity ends tonight. I looked around the dining room at customers who were trying to ignore our family drama while finishing their meals. Some were clearly uncomfortable, checking their phones and avoiding eye contact. Others seemed entertained by the impromptu dinner theater, watching with the fascination people reserve for public meltdowns and reality television. All of them deserved better than having their evening disrupted by Rachel's corporate takeover fantasies. "I need to get back to work," I said quietly. "No, you need to accept reality." Rachel's voice climbed toward the volume that had always been her most effective tool for getting her way, the same escalating intensity she'd used to claim toys, justify grade disputes, and negotiate curfew extensions throughout our childhood. "I'm in charge now. This is my restaurant. You can stay on as kitchen staff if you accept the new management structure, or you can leave. But either way, the family has spoken." The declaration hung in the dining room air like smoke from an overheated pan. Customers at nearby tables had stopped even pretending to focus on their conversations. Our servers stood frozen, uncertain whether to continue with their duties or wait for the family drama to resolve. "Rachel, you can't just declare yourself the manager." "I'm not declaring myself anything. The family has appointed me through proper legal channels." She waved her folder of documents like a battle flag, the papers rustling with the sound of authority. "Legal ownership documents, management agreements, operational control transfers, fiduciary responsibility assignments. It's all here, all official, all binding." The papers looked impressive, covered with legal-sounding language and official seals that probably cost extra at whatever legal services company had produced them. Rachel had clearly invested significant time and probably several $1,000s in creating documentation that appeared to support her claims. "You don't have the right to make unilateral decisions about this restaurant," I said, my voice still calm despite the growing absurdity of the situation. "I have every right. More rights than you do, actually." Rachel's smile became predatory, the expression she wore when explaining why her interpretation of contracts, agreements, and family decisions was the only legally valid one. "Because unlike you, I understand how business ownership actually works. I understand fiduciary responsibility, operational efficiency, profit maximization, and stakeholder value creation." She began walking around the dining room like she was conducting an inspection, pointing out what she called obvious inefficiencies and missed revenue opportunities. Customers watched with fascination and growing discomfort as she critiqued everything from table spacing to wine glass selection to server uniform standards. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," she announced to the room at large, her voice carrying the authority of someone presenting findings to a corporate board. "Emotional attachment to operational decisions instead of analytical thinking. This restaurant could be a gold mine with proper management oversight and strategic direction." I followed her circuit of the dining room, increasingly aware that this confrontation had moved beyond family dynamics into something that was actively harming the business and our customers' experience. Regular customers who came here for the peaceful atmosphere and consistent service were getting dinner theater instead. "Rachel, please. Let's discuss this privately. In the office." "We're past private discussions." She stopped in the center of the dining room and turned to face me with theatrical timing, positioning herself where every customer could see and hear her performance. "You've had 3 years to prove you could manage this place effectively. The results speak for themselves." She gestured around the restaurant as if the busy dining room and steady stream of customers somehow demonstrated failure rather than success, her movement encompassing what she clearly saw as evidence of mismanagement rather than achievement. "Moderate profits when we could have maximum profits. Conservative growth when we could have aggressive expansion. Missed opportunities at every level of operation." Rachel's voice carried the authority she'd learned to project during business school presentations, each word delivered with the confidence of someone who'd studied case studies and believed they applied universally. "The family deserves better returns on their investment capital." The accusation of underperformance was delivered with such confidence that I almost found myself questioning whether she might be right. Rachel had always possessed this ability to make her version of reality sound more convincing than actual reality, to present alternative interpretations that seemed logical until you examined them closely. "You're not qualified to run this restaurant," I said finally. "I'm more qualified than someone whose only training is cooking food and chatting with customers." Rachel's laugh was sharp and dismissive, the sound she made when explaining why practical experience was inferior to theoretical knowledge. "This is a business enterprise, not a hobby kitchen. It requires business skills, analytical thinking, strategic planning, and financial oversight. Not just the ability to make risotto." The distinction she drew was familiar from years of family gatherings where Rachel's academic achievements were celebrated while my hands-on work was dismissed as mere labor, interesting but ultimately less valuable than what she called intellectual contributions. "Cooking is only one small part of restaurant operations," she continued, consulting her folder of research like she was citing academic sources. "The real value creation comes from strategic planning, financial optimization, marketing analysis, operational efficiency, and customer relationship management. Areas where I have actual expertise and proven track records." Her confidence was absolute, supported by documentation, family approval, and the unwavering belief that business school had prepared her to manage any enterprise in any industry with equal competence. "I've already scheduled meetings with new suppliers for next week," Rachel announced, pulling out her phone to show what appeared to be a calendar full of appointments. "Renegotiated 3 vendor contracts based on volume commitments, identified 4 redundant staffing positions that can be eliminated, and developed a comprehensive marketing strategy that should increase foot traffic by at least 35% within 6 months." The scope of changes she'd planned was breathtaking in its presumption. She'd apparently spent weeks developing a complete operational overhaul without consulting anyone who actually worked at the restaurant, built relationships with vendors who didn't know she had no authority to negotiate, and made commitments that would affect every aspect of our daily operations. "So," she said, stopping directly in front of me with her folder of official-looking documents, "here's how this transition works. You can accept the new management structure and continue as head chef under my supervision, with clearly defined responsibilities and performance metrics, or you can tender your resignation and leave. But you don't get to continue pretending to run this place." The ultimatum was delivered with the same tone she'd used as a child when dividing up toys or choosing television programs. Absolute certainty that her preference would prevail because she declared it both reasonable and inevitable, backed by what appeared to be proper documentation and family authority. The dining room had gone almost completely silent, customers openly staring at our family drama with the fascination people reserve for car accidents and public meltdowns. I could see phones being raised to record what was clearly becoming a viral moment. "I choose option 3, I said quietly. Rachel's eyebrows rose with the confidence of someone who'd covered all possible contingencies. "There is no option 3. I've structured this transition to account for all reasonable responses. You're fired." The words came out calmly without anger or drama. Just a simple statement of fact delivered in the same tone I might use to tell a server that table 6 needed more bread or that we were running low on the evening's special. Rachel's expression shifted through confusion, disbelief, and mounting outrage like someone processing information that contradicted every assumption underlying their carefully constructed plan. "You can't fire me. I just explained that I'm in charge now. I have legal documentation. You were never hired, so you can't be in charge." I reached for the apron she'd knocked from my hands during her dramatic gesture. "But you can leave. Right now. I have legal documents establishing management authority. You have papers you printed at a document service." I folded the apron neatly, maintaining the calm that had carried me through 3 years of building this business. "They have no legal authority over anything that happens in this restaurant." The certainty in Rachel's expression flickered for the first time. Around us, the dining room had gone almost completely quiet except for the soft clink of silverware and whispered conversations as customers tried to process what they were witnessing. The family voted in an emergency meeting. The family doesn't own this restaurant. The simple statement hung in the air between us like a revelation that recontextualized everything that had happened over the past 30 minutes. Rachel's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to process information that didn't fit her carefully constructed narrative about family businesses and shared ownership. "That's impossible. Mom and Dad invested $30,000 when you started this place. Uncle Tony helped with the initial lease negotiations. Aunt Marie provided the marketing contacts. Rachel's voice carried the strain of someone trying to maintain confidence while her fundamental assumptions crumbled. This is a family business. Mom and Dad loaned me $30,000 to start this place. I paid them back 18 months ago with 12% interest. I looked around the dining room that had become our unwitting theater, taking in the faces of customers who were getting far more entertainment than they'd bargained for. Uncle Tony helped me negotiate the lease because he's a lawyer and I asked for advice. Aunt Marie introduced me to her friend who does restaurant marketing. But this restaurant belongs to me. Just me. Rachel's folder slipped from her hands, official-looking documents scattering across the hardwood floor like props from a play that had suddenly ended. But the family meeting, the legal documents, the management transfer agreements, were all based on assumptions that weren't true. I could see her trying to recalculate to find some angle or argument that would restore her version of reality. But the foundation of her entire performance had just crumbled, and she was struggling to adjust to information that made her weeks of preparation irrelevant. You let me believe. You never corrected me when I said. Rachel's voice trailed off as she processed the scope of her mistake. You never asked. You just assumed you had the right to take over, the same way you've always assumed you had the right to take over anything that caught your interest. I gestured toward her scattered papers. You did excellent research about a business you don't own and have no authority over. The dining room remained unnaturally quiet, customers watching our family drama play out with the uncomfortable fascination of people witnessing something that should probably be happening in private. But I prepared all those documents, did all that research, scheduled those vendor meetings. Rachel's voice carried the bewilderment of someone who'd invested significant time and money in a project that had just been revealed as completely pointless. You did excellent research about someone else's property. Very thorough analysis of a business you have no legal relationship with whatsoever. Rachel looked around the dining room as if seeing it clearly for the first time. The customers, the servers, the successful Friday night service that she'd interrupted with her corporate takeover fantasy. The reality of a functioning business that someone else had built and owned. I don't understand, she said quietly. The family always said this was a family investment. Mom and Dad always talked about our restaurant when they described it to friends. Because they're proud of what I built. That doesn't make them owners. Chef Marco emerged from the kitchen, drawn by the unusual quiet in what should have been a bustling dining room. He took in the scene with professional assessment, noting the scattered papers, Rachel's stricken expression, and the dining room full of customers who were getting dinner theater instead of their usual peaceful evening. Marco had worked in restaurants for 25 years, had seen family businesses implode over inheritance disputes, partnership disagreements and management succession battles. His expression suggested he understood exactly what was happening and how it was likely to end. "Everything okay out here?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Chef Marco," I said, "I'd like you to meet my sister Rachel. She was just leaving." Rachel looked at Marco, then back at me, her MBA confidence completely dissolved. "Amy, I thought," the family said. "I really believed. You believed what you wanted to believe because it supported what you wanted to do." I picked up her scattered documents from the floor and handed them back to her, noting how official they looked despite being completely meaningless. But wanting something doesn't give you the right to take it. She took the papers with shaking hands, the legal-looking seals and official language now revealed as elaborate props in a performance that had never had any real authority behind it. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I really thought I was helping. I thought the restaurant needed professional management to reach its potential. You thought you could take what I built because you have a degree and I don't." I kept my voice gentle but firm, the tone I might use with a customer who was disappointed that we couldn't accommodate an unreasonable request. "The same way you've always thought your academic achievements gave you authority over my practical work." Rachel clutched her folder against her chest like armor that could no longer protect her. "What do I do now?" "I've already scheduled those vendor meetings, made commitments to suppliers, told people I was taking over management. You call them and explain that you made a mistake. That you don't actually have any authority over this restaurant and never did." The practical implications of her presumption were starting to sink in. She'd spent weeks building relationships and making commitments based on authority she'd never possessed, creating a web of professional embarrassment that would follow her long after tonight's humiliation faded. But they'll think I'm incompetent, that I don't understand basic business relationships. They'll think you made assumptions without verifying your authority. Which is what happened. Rachel looked around the dining room one more time, taking in the successful restaurant that she'd planned to claim as her own, the customers who were watching her navigate the consequences of her overreach, the servers who were waiting to resume normal operations. Amy, can we talk about this privately? Work out some kind of arrangement. There's nothing to work out. This is my restaurant. I built it, I own it, I run it. I kept my voice calm but definitive. You can leave now or I can have you removed. But you don't get to negotiate terms for something you never had any claim to. The finality in my voice seemed to register. Rachel walked toward the exit with the careful steps of someone trying to preserve whatever dignity remained, her expensive heels clicking against the hardwood floors that had announced her confident arrival 30 minutes earlier. At the door she turned back one final time. Amy, I really did think I was helping. I thought the restaurant needed better management to be successful. You thought you could take something successful and make it yours. There's a difference. She left without another word, the door closing behind her with a soft chime that seemed to release the held breath of the entire dining room. The silence that followed was different from the tense quiet that had built during her performance, more like the satisfied exhale after a difficult but necessary conversation. I turned to face our customers, many of whom were still watching with fascination and concern, phones in hand and expressions ranging from entertainment to sympathy. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, I apologize for the interruption to your evening. Your patience is appreciated and dessert is on the house tonight for everyone. The dining room erupted in applause, breaking the tension that had built during Rachel's performance. Conversations resumed with the animated energy of people who'd witnessed something memorable. Servers returned to their duties with visible relief, and the normal rhythm of Friday night service gradually restored itself. Chef Marco smiled and shook his head with the weary amusement of someone who'd seen every possible variation of restaurant drama. Your sister. Former sister. At least for tonight. She'll be back. They always come back, usually with lawyers or family members or new theories about why they're entitled to what you built. Maybe. But not as the owner. I retied my apron and returned to the pass, where orders had continued to accumulate despite the family drama. The kitchen staff looked at me with expressions of relief and respect, understanding that the crisis had passed and normal operations could resume. As I expedited the next round of entrees, I reflected on how family assumptions could create such elaborate fantasies. Rachel had convinced herself and apparently made commitments to vendors and suppliers based on authority she'd never possessed, creating a complex web of professional relationships built on completely false premises. She'd researched everything except the most fundamental question: who actually owned what she was trying to take? The evening service continued smoothly, customers lingering over their complimentary desserts and wine, the atmosphere restored to its usual warmth and professionalism. Several tables approached me during the evening to express support and admiration for how I'd handled the situation, turning what could have been a damaging incident into something that actually strengthened customer loyalty. By closing time, Rachel's dramatic performance had become just another story in the restaurant's history, though probably one that would be retold by customers for months to come. But for me, it marked the end of letting family assumptions define my professional reality. The next morning, I had coffee with our parents to clarify exactly what Rachel had told them about family votes, ownership transfers, and management appointments. It was a conversation that was long overdue, one that established clear boundaries about who owned what and who had the authority to make decisions about my business. The conversation revealed that Rachel had presented them with convincing documentation and compelling arguments about their investment, giving them ongoing ownership stakes. She'd used business school terminology and financial projections to create an impression of shared authority that had never actually existed. Mom and Dad were embarrassed by how easily they'd been convinced, impressed by Rachel's preparation and confidence in ways that had overridden their practical knowledge about the loan they'd made and the repayment they'd received. "We never meant to interfere with your business," Dad said. "We just thought Rachel understood the financial side better than we did." "Rachel understands how to make things sound official and authoritative," I replied. "That's not the same as understanding how they actually work." It took several weeks for the full scope of Rachel's presumption to become clear. She'd made vendor commitments that required awkward phone calls to explain and cancel. She'd scheduled employee meetings to discuss operational changes that would never be implemented. She'd even contacted a commercial real estate agent about expanding to a second location. The professional embarrassment of unwinding these commitments was probably more painful for Rachel than the public humiliation at the restaurant. Her reputation in the business community would recover, but the story of her failed restaurant takeover would follow her for years. Rachel never returned to claim her management position, though she did eventually come back as a customer 6 months later, with a reservation for two and a much quieter approach to family dynamics. She ordered the osso buco and admitted it was excellent, then asked thoughtful questions about how I'd developed the recipe and built relationships with our suppliers. For the first time in our adult lives, she seemed genuinely interested in understanding what I'd accomplished rather than claiming it for herself. But she never again suggested that my business needed her management expertise. The incident became local legend, retold by customers and staff as an example of how assumptions about family businesses could create spectacular misunderstandings. It also established clear boundaries that protected the restaurant from future family interference. Most importantly, it marked the moment when I stopped allowing other people's definitions of success to overshadow the reality of what I'd built through years of careful work, relationship building, and practical expertise that no business degree could have provided. The restaurant continued to thrive, expanding its customer base and reputation without any need for the optimization strategies Rachel had proposed. Sometimes the best management decision is knowing when not to change what's already working well.